everybody and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well, and if you've never seen my face before, hi, my name is Kiva and I'm bringing you another True Crime Tuesday. All I've done recently is True Crime videos because I did True Crime Tuesday last week, then a two-part special on Tupac and Biggie, which if you haven't seen, go watch it because it took me a while. And it was very requested as well, so yeah, go check that out. Go check out all my other True Crime Tuesdays. I got a playlist. So yeah, today we're talking about the murder of Kirsten Costas. So Kirsten Costas was born on the 23rd of July 1968. And this is so unrelated, but my birthday is the 23rd of July, if anyone was wondering. When I read that I was like, oh my god, that's mental. I don't know why I find that so crazy. There's only like a certain amount of days in the year people can have a birthday on. But I find that crazy that me and Kirsten had the same birthday apparently. She gives off major Leo energy though, so it makes sense. Her parents were called Arthur and Barry, and as well she had a brother called Peter. So they lived in California, but more specifically a small suburban town called Orinda. And Orinda was kind of one of these towns where most of the people had quite a bit of money. So most of the families were quite wealthy, like lived in nice houses, had the money to treat themselves. And the Costas family were no different to this. Her family was quite well off, you know. She would be known to be always trendy, always wearing new clothes. The school district that they lived in had the highest ranking in the state. It also had a 99 to 100% pass rate, so a very good school. So every year the teachers would get on average $75,000, which is insane, especially in like the 1970s as well. I find that mental. Like, teachers earn way less now. The school she went to was called Monte High School, and this school was like no exception, you know. It was a very kind of high achieving school, and it was known for a lot of its alumni to go on and do great things, you know, like Olympians. And it was also a highly athletic school that had like teams for everything. Very outstanding school. But because it's so outstanding, it's also known to be quite competitive, because obviously a lot of the students, they have parents, and their parents are very high achieving. So the students want to be high achieving and want to live up to their parents' expectations. So the school's known to be very competitive, very hard to get into clubs and stuff.
Monte High School was a competitive place. These were kids who were the sons and daughters of very successful parents. They wanted to replicate their parents' successes. They worked hard in school.
It said it's one of these schools, if you're not the best and they don't really care about you, you know, they focus on the best of the best, and everyone else is kind of just like left in the dust. And Kirsten was one of these extremely high achieving girls. So at her school, she was on the cheerleading team, and she was on like the swim team as well. And the fact she made both of these in such like a high achieving school is pretty great.
She was 15 years old. She was pretty. She had a lot of friends. She was very athletic. She was on the varsity swim team. She played soccer. She played baseball. She was one of the kind of kids that everybody else in high school gravitates to.
She was very popular. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone knew of her. She had like an amazing friend group. She was quite short, and she had short, dark, wavy hair.
She was super cute. She had cute hair, cute clothes. She had kind of a naturally tan skin. She always looked like she'd been out in the sun.
She was very fashionable, never wanted to be seen in last season's trend. She was described as being funny, witty, a bit sarcastic at times as well. She was also very smart, so she got like really good grades at this school. She was super organised, just knew what she wanted. And all of her friends were kind of on the same level as her, you know, she hung out with people of her status. Everyone just wanted to be friends with this girl. Everyone wanted to be Kirsten.
Identity was being wrapped around what club you belonged to and where you were in the social status. The cool kids ran the school. They could decide if you were liked or if you weren't liked. They could make you feel bad or they could make you feel good. One Valentine's Day, I bought a whole bunch of lollipops and gave them to some of the girls. And I remember very distinctly a young woman taking it, looking at me and going, whatever, and just throwing it in the trash can right in front of me.
So at this high achieving school, she wasn't the best of the best, you know, she made this elite category. And at the school there was a group called the Bobolinks, or short for the Bobbies, and it was kind of like an elite group, you know, you had to be invited. It was the best of the best once again.
The Bobolinks was almost like a high school sorority. It was a very snobbish, very elite organization. They were picked because they tended to come from the most affluent families, you know, the stars of the school, the most popular kids. One boy said about the Bobbies, it's a socialite group. If you don't fit the socialite model, you're not asked to join.
Its purpose to the public was to like host all these fundraisers and charity events, but in actuality they were kind of just for parties, more like a sorority than anything, just like an elitist group. And to get into the Bobolinks you had to have an invite, you couldn't just waltz your way in, had to do like initiation tasks and everything. People at the school felt that the Bobolinks had a godlike complex because they were kind of so obsessed with themselves. No one say anything about Marlon or I'm going to clean it up in a stick, I promise. At the end of every school year, the Bobolinks would invite some new people to join because obviously the seniors, they would leave the school, so they'd have some places to fill. And Kirsten got an invite. It was the summer of 1984. Kirsten got an invite along with one of her friends called Lauren. And while they were on summer holiday, they expected to hear something from the Bobolinks to kind of give them an initiation task or something to get into the group. In the Costas house, the phone rings about 2 weeks into summer, and it's actually Berit, Kirsten's mother, who picks up the phone. So at this time, Kirsten, she's away at like cheerleading camp, so she wasn't around the house at this point. The person on the other end of the phone said that the Saturday coming up, there was like an initiation dinner for the Bobolinks, and that obviously Kirsten was invited. The person on the phone did not give their name, but they said that they would come and pick Kirsten up. And kind of everyone in the town knew about the Bobolinks and how like big they were. So Kirsten's mother knew about them and she was like, yeah, I'll tell her, like, that's fine. And then that was that. Saturday night comes, and I'm not sure what time it was that Kirsten was like picked up. So most sources said it was 8:30, but then a couple said 6 o'clock. So it definitely was like in the evening, you know, it wasn't like the afternoon or anything. Like they just honked their car. And she went out and she got in the car. And the car was described as being a yellow Ford Pinto, and it was quite beat up, so it wasn't in the best of conditions. So now we're gonna fast forward about 1 or 2 hours, and we're a town over from Orinda now. And Kirsten knocks on the door of Alexander and Mary Jane Arnold. At the time they had friends around because it was games night, but she asked if they could borrow their phone because, you know, this was before mobile phones, to go ring a house phone to get her parents to pick her up because she was out with a friend, but the friend got weird. So she tried to call her house phone, but they didn't answer, so Alex just said, how about I drive you? And Kirsten accepted. Now just for the record, his car was like a silver car, I'm not sure of the make. But Kirsten seemed like a little bit panicked, a little bit worried, but Alex didn't really think much of it because, you know, she was going home, she's going to be safe. And they just kind of had a normal conversation on the way there. They were just talking about like school and general life. Alex noticed that for a lot of the journey there was a yellow Ford Punto behind them. So he said to Kirsten, you know, do you know this car? And she was like, oh, don't worry about it, it's fine. So he dropped her home and he was going to like wait a minute to just make sure she got in okay. And she said that she was going to knock on her next door neighbour's like door to make sure that he kind of not looked after her but kept an eye on her, because, you know, she had this weird friend apparently, and like it was dark, her parents weren't in, you know. She was walking across her neighbour's lawn to go to her neighbour's house. Someone approached. This was the driver of the yellow car who was following them and who picked Kirsten up to begin with. When Kirsten sees this person, she's shouting at them to go away, that they're weird, they're a loser, and she doesn't want to be their friend. And then this person starts attacking her. So Alex is in his car and he sees this happen and he sees Kirsten fall to the floor and he's thinking it was a fist fight. So the driver quickly got up, ran away, ran back to the car, and Alex drove after this car to try and catch the person so they could face consequences for having a fist fight with Kirsten, who did not attack. But Alex was wrong, it wasn't a fist fight. Kirsten had multiple stab wounds, so she was severely injured and she crawled up to her neighbour's door and knocked on it. My neighbour was called Arthur Hillman, and he opened the door, and when he did, she literally fell down into his arms. And he was so confused. He knows Kirsten well, you know, he knows that she's a good girl, she doesn't have any enemies. So he was just so confused. And he shouts for his son to ring 911, and he's just asking her, you know, who did this to you? And she's just saying over and over again that she can't breathe. Arthur did see Alex's car speeding away, but he didn't know it was Alex's car. So he was presuming the person who was driving this silver car was the perpetrator. So when the ambulance came and took Kirsten away and the police were talking to him and calling off the area, he told them about this silver car. And as he was saying it, Alex pulled back up in his silver car. I would find that so creepy. And Alex managed to like explain the situation, you know. He told police about her knocking on his door and he gave her a lift home. And that when he saw the attack happen, he thought it was a fist fight, but he couldn't catch up and ended up losing the yellow car. So police were a bit suspicious still, but obviously he had guests around his house and they all like said, you know, that they'd seen Kirsten, and his wife Mary Jane had seen the yellow car kind of driving behind her husband's car, and she didn't think it was following, she just thought it was behind, but she noticed this car. He told police about Kirsten's weird friend, as she said, and described the attacker as a chunky girl, which, I mean, chunky is different to everyone, you know, but a chunky girl with stringy blonde hair and a tracksuit. Sadly, Kirsten did not survive the night, and at 11 PM on the 23rd of June, she died of her injuries. One of her stab wounds had a severed an artery in her heart and she just could not survive them. And the town was in shock. Crimes like this did not happen in Orinda. You know, it was a quiet town, never normally had any sort of crime, let alone murder, especially murder of an innocent teenage girl. Her funeral was held and hundreds of mourners turned up. You know, people were gutted about her death. Police started questioning hundreds of people, and especially people who went to Kirsten's school, and everyone who was in the Bobolinks said that nothing was planned for that night. So it's clear that it was a setup and this was planned. Someone hated Kirsten and planned to attack her that night and lure her out of the house. They searched over 500 cars in the area, and they did search cars of other colours and makes than what people saw because it was dark. You know, people could like think it's a yellow car but it's a different colour car, or I know that I wouldn't be able to like tell the make of a car in the dark. So it could have been a mistake, but yeah, they searched loads of cars and they tried to look at individuals and like give them a motive. For example, someone could have been annoyed that Kirsten got on the swim team and they didn't, so they attacked her for this. They would look at like even people they thought were innocent and try and give them a motive. Now, while talking to one of Kirsten's friends called Ashley, she said her and Kirsten used to kind of prank call people from the school, people who were a bit less popular in the lower social ranks, you know, like kind of nerds and that sort of thing. They would prank call these people. So Kirsten, maybe she wasn't as nice and pristine as everyone thought she was. So police started looking into it as someone had attacked her because maybe she said something mean to them, or it was more of a bullying situation. Maybe this is why she got attacked. More and more people were now coming forward saying that Kirsten was mean to a lot of people, so they just had all of this evidence that Kirsten maybe was a bully.
As the police dig deeper, some girls present a different picture of the popular cheerleader.
She was just very outspoken and she kind of told it like it was in her own way. I can remember her just being like denigrating, very dismissive. She could be mean, definitely. I think she could be condescending. You know, it was always talking behind your back, talking about you when you're walking in the hall. It was always in a look. But those looks are killers.
People in the school were coming up with their own theories and deciding who the killer was. And this one name kept coming up over and over again, and this was Nancy Kane. Nancy, she was known to be a bit of a loner, and she was a goth, you know. She dyed her hair, she wore piercings, she wore all black, and she didn't really fit in at the school. She did used to be in the same friendship group as Kirsten, but there was a bit of an argument and something happened and she left. And it is well known at the time, Kirsten and her did not get on, and then obviously Kirsten died, so people were very suspicious of Nancy Kane.
I was actually, you know, a big part of that popular crowd. I met Kirsten in middle school. We went to dances, we did sports together. I dressed a lot differently than everybody else. I colored my hair, I wore a lot of black. I had a lot of eye makeup. I definitely did not wear the jeans and button-down shirt and topsiders. I smoked a lot of pot, drank a lot of booze. I was a rebellious teenager that was looking for trouble. I had made it clear that I didn't like Kirsten. I don't like any of your friends. I don't like what you stand for. I was angry at what she represented.
Nancy said Kirsten represented everything that she hated at the school. So maybe she did target her. And she wrote in a notebook she wanted to watch her blood drip.
I remember looking at her curly hair and being angry at her. And just being angry at what she represented. And I wrote in my notebook, I want to see her blood drip. Drip, drip, drip.
And people kind of knew Nancy as the weird girl who sat in the corner, not talking, wearing all black with her nails painted, all these piercings. So people just like judged her because of how she looked in the stereotype. Everyone at the school was pointing the finger at Nancy, saying that it had to be an outcast who killed her, who was just jealous of her. Why would anyone else want to kill Kirsten? So obviously police went and questioned Nancy and asked where she was at the time of the killing, and she said she was at the movies watching Ghostbusters, so she had an alibi. So police kind of left it there. But on the first day back at school, so it's the new school year, first year without Kirsten, Nancy did not turn up either. Nancy was actually at the police station at the time, telling the police she lied to them. She was not watching Ghostbusters.
But it's not about the murder.
I went back to the police and said, wait a minute, I didn't tell you the truth. It wasn't at a movie.
Instead, she was at her boyfriend's house, which at the time she wasn't allowed to be like at her boyfriend's house on a Saturday night. So yeah, she had an alibi, you know, her boyfriend said that she was there. So Nancy was cleared, but her parents still weren't happy, you know. She transferred schools. Her parents never let her do a lie detector test, which literally everyone else did, so this looks suspicious, but Nancy, they ruled had nothing to do with it. Everyone thought she was more guilty as she moved schools, but it was just to get away from the bullying and harassment she was getting. Some people did think it was Nancy, but other people thought it was an outsider who didn't live in the town, as no one in the town would do this. Some people even thought it was a satanic ritual and she was sacrificed. So police kind of had nothing to go off, so they contacted the FBI to get a profile made up. And they do this by kind of looking at people in jail, by like looking at people who have stabbed people to kind of see what pops up over and over again in people who like to stab people, if you get me. It's so insane how they did this, especially in the 80s, because they actually got it so accurate. So about 3 months after the murder, they gave it back to the police. It was 14 pages long. It was a teen girl who was likely either friends with Kirsten or knew her. She was from a Catholic family and she was one of 6 children, they said. She was probably angry at Kirsten for something as she used a knife. And obviously to use a knife, it's a much more violent action than to point a gun and shoot it. Especially with a gun you can do it from far away, but with a knife you have to be up against the person. What shocked the police, the report said the person would not be remorseful, as they were hoping the killer would break down in an interview and that's how they'd know. So police went and started comparing this to people at the school and they found an exact match. Now at the same time, the family hired a private investigator to look into the crime more, and he found that one person, their alibi just didn't add up and had never been like verified. So he went and spoke to this person's kind of alibi. So this person said they were babysitting for a family this night, but this family said they hadn't used this person's babysitting services in over a year. So that person was not babysitting and that was a lie. So private investigator took this to the detectives working on this case, gave them the name of the person, and turns out the name of this person who faked their alibi and the person who the profile matched was the same person. Bernadette Protti, she was the opposite of Kirsten, just wanted to be like her. Came from a big family, there were 8 of them in the house. She had 5 other siblings, she was one of 6. Very, very devout Christian house. Every single day at the same time her mother would read them all the Bible, and her father actually went out and kind of taught religion as a hobby. Her mother was just like a home worker and her dad was actually retired at like the time of this incident. She did have like a group of friends, but they were kind of just average. They weren't really the populars, weren't like loners or outcasts, they were just kind of in the middle. And she just wanted to be like Kirsten, she envied Kirsten. So she started trying to do the same things as Kirsten to be around her more. She tried out for the cheerleading team but was unsuccessful, whereas Kirsten got in. And Bernadette actually said to a friend that she felt it was really unfair as she put more effort in than Kirsten, but you know, Kirsten made it and she didn't. And she also tried out for like the swim team, again she did not make it. And she tried out for the yearbook committee like Kirsten, who was on the yearbook committee, and she just wasn't getting anywhere. But she managed to get a place in the student office, like helping out, and Kirsten also helped out here. And she kind of got to know Kirsten a little bit more here. And Kirsten would ask Bernadette to do favours for her. Kirsten could clearly tell that Bernadette was kind of like a little bit obsessed with her, and she would use this, you know, for her own personal gain to get Bernadette to do stuff for her. Bernadette actually got accepted into the Bobbins around the same time that Kirsten was, but this still wasn't enough for Bernadette. Kirsten just had no interest in being her friend whatsoever. Now there was a school trip, it was like a ski trip at the start of this year, so at the start of 1984. Bernadette's family were not very wealthy at all, like compared to the rest of the town they were pretty poor. So Bernadette had to work by babysitting and stuff to raise the money for this trip and to buy her equipment and stuff. Even then though, a lot of her equipment was like borrowed or second hand, you know, it wasn't the most stylish stuff. Whereas Kirsten had all the newest stuff, she had all like the trendy stuff, the coolest and most expensive equipment. And she would make fun of Bernadette for her equipment and how she couldn't afford better equipment. And this didn't even put Bernadette off wanting to be Kirsten's friend. Police took Bernadette into questioning and showed her the FBI profile and said, you know, does this seem familiar? And she was like, that sounds like me. And they were like, yeah, but she didn't break down, she was very calm in the interview, so they just thought it wasn't her. Everyone in the school was just adamant it wasn't Bernadette, she wasn't the sort of girl to do anything like this. But nevertheless, they got a search warrant, and in her garage they actually found the yellow Ford Pinto, the one that was beaten up. And everyone kind of knew that Bernadette's family owned this, but Bernadette didn't have a license at the time, she was only 15. So no one really kind of mentioned it because they just didn't think it was her. After her questioning, she returned home and said to her mum, can we talk? But her mum was just too tired, so Bernadette went off to bed. The following day, Bernadette gave her mother a letter and said to read it exactly half an hour after Bernadette left for school. And Bernadette knew every single morning her mother sat down and read the Bible. So this is what her mother did, and she set a timer for 30 minutes. And she opened the letter. And in this letter, Bernadette confessed that she was the one who killed Kirsten. She said she could live with the guilt, but she just couldn't ignore it for the rest of her life. And she begged her parents to still love her. They said not to ask why she did it because she didn't even know herself. Now, obviously, her mum went straight down to the school, found her and took her to the police station where she confessed to the murder. Her confession was recorded and she was very emotional, just saying she felt inferior to Kirsten all the time. She was embarrassed by her family's lack of money and stuff. So this is what she told police happened on the night of Kirsten's murder. She told police what they already know about how she was the person who rung up Kirsten's house phone and told them about the dinner, and she was the person who picked Kirsten up in the car. Now, Kirsten was apparently disappointed when she saw it as Bernadette and not someone else. Nevertheless, she still got in because she thought she was going to a dinner with multiple people, so it wouldn't just be her and Bernadette. Noticed that Bernadette was wearing like a tracksuit and asked, you know, why she wasn't dressed up for the dinner. Bernadette admitted that she made it up. There was no dinner, but they were going to a party, but she just didn't want to tell Kirsten's mother this in case she said no, so she said it was a dinner. Now, Kirsten noticed there was a large butcher's knife in the car and was a bit like, why is there a knife in your car? And Bernadette was like, oh, it's my sister's for when she needs to cut fruit and vegetables, even though it was like a 12-inch knife. Kirsten was fine with this, and they ended up driving to the next town, and they stopped in a church car park for a bit, and this is where Kirsten got out of the car for a little bit, and she was there for about 40 minutes smoking weed. And Bernadette did not know that Kirsten did weed, you know, she was meant to be like a good girl. No one in this town really spoke about drugs and if they did them. And Kirsten offered Bernadette some, but Bernadette said no. Apparently, according to Bernadette, this is where a fight started because she didn't want to smoke the weed. Kirsten asked Bernadette where the party was and who had invited her, and Bernadette said it was actually like a second-hand invite. Kirsten apparently kicked off at this and said she didn't want to go to a party she wasn't technically invited to. So Bernadette said, come anyway because otherwise you're going to spoil everything. Bernadette started crying and asked Kirsten why she's so mean when Bernadette just wanted to be friends with her. Kirsten rolled her eyes and called her pathetic, and then she left. This is where she went to Alex and Mary Jane's house and they took her home. But Bernadette followed. Bernadette was terrified that Kirsten would tell everyone about what she'd said, and everyone would hate her even more. They met on Kirsten's neighbour's lawn, and then she stabbed Kirsten. She stabbed her twice in the stomach, once in the hand, and then twice in the back. Then she ran away, and she got away. She returned home and was panicked, thinking the police would come straight for her, but they didn't. So her and her mother went for a late night walk about 10 p.m. She continued life as normal, went to the funeral. She was very upset there. Did like an original police interview with everyone else, did a lie detector test. She was officially arrested on the 10th of December 1984, so about 6 months after the murder. And the trial was quite tricky because she was underage first off. It was kind of a fact like she knew what she did, but she couldn't be charged like an adult. And as well, it was like a bit of confusion if it should be first or second degree murder. Her team said that she would plead guilty to second degree murder, but the courts refused this, and there was actually no jury, it was just a judge in the court. There was 3 days of testimony. Bernadette claimed it was not premeditated, and Bernadette's sister Gina claimed that it was her who put the knife in the car to cut fruit and vegetable. And the prosecution was saying that it wasn't like, why would you keep a 12-inch knife in your car to cut vegetables and fruit? And as well, if they were going to a party, then why was Bernadette in a tracksuit? Bernadette was found guilty of second-degree murder, and she was given the maximum sentence for this because she was a child, which was 9 years. She went to California Youth Authority. She completed her high school education there. Now, after serving just 7 years, she got parole and was released. And this was on the 10th of June 1992, so it was almost like the 8th year anniversary of Kirsten's death. Her family were disgusted that she'd been let out so soon. She didn't even serve her full sentence. And they ended up moving away because they just didn't want to live in this town anymore. And a lot of people in the community agreed that Bernadette should not have been released, you know. She's not out in the world, she moved, she got a job, she changed her name, she's got a husband and kids now. Now, Kirsten's classmates kind of believe that Bernadette made a lot of this story up because Bernadette would have done anything to be like Kirsten. She would have smoked the weed if there was weed. And as well, a lot of people think that Bernadette may have been a lesbian and she might have been in love with Kirsten. But kind of in this time, lesbianism and like being gay and stuff, it was not very like accepted. So maybe Kirsten found out that she was a lesbian and liked her, and Bernadette was scared of people finding out about this. And some of her classmates didn't really feel much sympathy for Kirsten as she made fun of people quite a lot. But I don't think this is a reason to kill people. I know a lot of people who make nasty comments, but I don't wish any of them dead. I just think it's such like a situation that we're all in, because we've all like had nasty comments made, but we don't go and kill the person. But yeah, that's the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.